Clap one on three. One, two, three. What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're so glad that you're here. As always, I am your host, Lauren Ash, and as always, I am joined by my co-hostess with the mostess, Christy Oxborrow. How you feeling?
Oh, I'm jazzed because if I may, happy Eurovision to all who celebrate.
How beautiful.
Yeah, the day this drops is
Yeah.
the day of semi-final one.
Wow.
And then Thursday is semi-final two, Saturday, finale.
Wowzer.
Yeah, I'm practically drooling over here about getting into it. I can't wait.
I love this.
I can't wait.
Um, you're gonna love what I have to offer.
I
You're
can't
like,
wait.
hey, here's this thing that I love, that I'm passionate
Yes.
about. What's my headline news? I've got a grumbling in my tumbling. Um,
Amazing.
I just think it's a very quick story. I've got indigestion of some kind at the moment, and
Mm.
here's the reason why I want to bring it up. I ate a salad, and you know what it is?
You're
You
worried
know
about the
what it is?
lettuce.
I'm worried about the lettuce. And by the way, I've been burned so many times with food poisoning from lettuce. So many times. I have a few questions. One, what are we doing, folks? Are we not bathing it properly? Like, how is this happening? And two, why do I bother? Why do I bother? What's the
Oh
point?
yeah. If it's repeated, that's a slap in the face.
And I'll be honest with you, it's taken me a while. I've gone off baby spinach. I've gone off spinach in general because
Uh-huh.
again, when you get sick on it once, then it's like you never want to go back to it. Today, I was building it. I was ordering it. I was building this salad and I put romaine and spinach in there. What was I thinking? I was like, enough time has passed. Enough time has passed.
This is the part that's, I'll say it, unfair.
It
That
is.
you got burned and then you were like, "You know what? I'm going to try and do something healthy. It's
Yes.
fine." And then getting burned again? I mean, of course you
I just,
wouldn't want to go back.
I'll be honest with you. I rarely eat salads anymore because of this. I'm sure I've talked about this on the show before. I am
Sure.
spooked. I'm spooked. If I'm making it at home myself, it's a little different because I can like really wash the hell out of the produce. But like
Sure.
getting it from a place, I can't do it anymore. Because you know what? Now I'm going, is this real, this grumbling, or is this psychosomatic? Is this the brain?
Because your brain was like, "I told her not to do lettuce."
Yep. And I don't feel like
Mm.
food, it doesn't feel like food poisoning. It just feels like a constant, like, oh, why did you
Oh.
do this? You know what I mean?
You should voice a grumbly tummy on a cartoon.
That would be cute. That would be
That would be
cute.
cute.
I also have a feeling like it's a musical. I don't know why.
Oh, it has to be. With
Right?
all the grumbly sounds that are gonna happen, has to be.
Why did you feed me something that was off? I can't tell. You can't communicate with a cough.
We'll work on it.
We'll work on it. Listen, we're workshopping right now. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, of course, of course. Yes, it could be internal, like just your brain. You'll love what I add, which I think I add every week.
Mhm.
It could just be 40s.
Yeah, I know. Well, this is also making the penny drop. One, why haven't I given myself the joy of having some of my Tums that I love so much?
Of
And two,
course.
the other answer is because I'm almost out. I
Oh.
looked at them the other day and I went, you gotta go to the store, get some more of these.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, anyway. Listen, I had my concert in Hamilton, Ontario
Yes.
last week. It was an absolute joy. Thank you to everyone who came. Um, there was a podcast listener there. She
Hey.
was visiting the United States from Australia, found out about my show, and then came to the show.
Wow.
Also, shout out to Kat, one of our Patreon members.
Really?
She drove in from Nova Scotia.
Well, shit.
Yeah.
I love to hear about that.
I mean, and listen, there was also people. I'm not downgrading anyone who came out who is from the local area. Don't get me wrong, but I have to give shout outs. I have to give shout outs where they're
Of
due.
course.
Yeah,
Oh, that's fun. I love that.
it was a thrill. It was a thrill.
Yes.
It was fun. It was a small venue, which was nice because it felt like a lot of energy in there. You know what I mean?
Right.
I loved it. Loved it.
Yes.
Um, Now, again, much like the last time, my backpack was a pharmacy. And I think it was even worse this time because for some reason, this
Mm.
time, the day before the show, I had like what can only be described as like a 24-hour bug. It was very strange.
Oh.
I just felt off and like I
Mm.
was getting sick. And I was like, I can't believe this is happening. So I went to Shoppers Drug Mart. For those people who aren't from Canada, it's a pharmacy. The drug is in the name. But I just bought so much stuff and I was like, I'm going to be prepared for everything. I mean, we're talking anything from like cold pills to Flonase to Tiger
Yep.
Balm to I was just like everything under the sun. I
Hmm.
packed it that the Tums were in there. I mean, everything. I had everything I needed. Woke up the next morning, totally fine. Day of the show, completely fine. Again, I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know what that's about, but anyway.
I'd love to take a look at who's running the board in there. You know what I mean? Like the inside out board. I'd love to know.
Yeah, I know.
I have to believe
I'm
that was anxiety taking a go.
it probably was. It probably was.
Because I know my in as the second that my brain is like, I don't think she's gonna like this, then my body goes, make her feel sick, understood. And then I get physically ill. And then I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I'm physically ill before this like event. And then as soon as it's over, I'm fine. And it's, oh, because I was anxious. So my body was like, oh, you're actually sick.
Well, what's interesting also is, and I think I've shared this before. I also am happy to share it. I take anti-anxiety medication now every day, which, by the way,
Yeah.
first of all, has changed my life, and I highly
Hey.
recommend if you're on the fence. It's just another tool that can help us. That's all I'll say. But anyway, also no pressure if it's not for you. For me, I was like, this is a game changer. But what's interesting is, I think you might be right, and I think what's interesting about it is, typically I know what anxiety feels like in my body because I've experienced it my entire life.
Yep.
But then this, it was like it was almost like the medication was fighting it or something. Like it was like I was in an internal battle. So then my body was
Mhm.
just like, get her sick. like, like it was like,
Yep.
this isn't working. She isn't panicking like she normally would.
Oh,
I don't
sure.
know, take her down. You know what I mean? Like it felt like it maybe is something there because again, this is the
Sure.
first time that I feel like my anxiety has been potentially that high. And that's just nerves, by the way, folks.
Of
Um,
course.
and that's, I think, since I've started taking the medication, I think this is the first time that it's like really peaked. So maybe that's all part of it. I don't know.
I mean, it's more than possible.
Yeah.
I find the older I get, the more my anxiety does cause physical illness.
Right.
But it also doesn't have to be anxiety. For example, a few weeks back, I guess I slept weird.
Mm.
I don't know. I wasn't there. Um, but I woke up and I was like, fuck, my neck is like on one side, like it really hurts and I can't turn certain ways, which I discovered. I was like, oh, it's a little sore. And then I went to the store and I was trying to drive and I tried to like do a shoulder check. And that was the moment I was like gonna crumple because I was like, I can't, my neck. Um, 3.5 weeks I was out with like neck injury to the point where I was icing. I did some Robaxacet for a while. I was like anything. I had my husband like deeply massage my neck. It went all the way up like to the base of my skull and then all the way down to the top of my ass. And I was like, what are we doing? And we were off for that week and I was like, I'm not going to research. There's all this stuff. Like I'm going to deep clean parts of my home. I'm going to get so much done so that when I enter those parts of my home, I won't feel anxiety when I look at them. I was in so much pain. I couldn't do anything other than the couch.
See, I also think that that's someone else is taking the wheel. Someone else is going,
Oh,
she
sure.
needs to lay down.
Yeah. Oh, and did I binge quite a lot of Sopranos? I did. As of this moment, I have 5 episodes left in that series.
Mm,
And I'll say it, the last time we spoke, I was like, oh, it's kind of dull. Like, what are we doing? There have been deaths that I have screamed about that I don't even know. And then I was like, okay, I've got one last season, 13 episodes, no big deal. No, 21 episodes. But
it's a
I've
lot.
been burning through them.
I love
And
this
so
for
I've
you.
got 5 left to go of the 86. And then I will call it a day and be like, I did I did a full watch of it, pat myself on the back, and move on.
Good for
Maybe
you.
Bridgerton. I've heard
Sky's the limit.
there's that Yellowstone I've heard good things about. Like, who knows? But for something that I started in October, went hard for like a few weeks and then stopped so that I could do like 6 weeks of Christmas movies and then picked it up again later. I'm really getting there.
I love
But
this for you.
yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for being injured, I wouldn't have got there. But now I just got to find another time to squeeze that cleaning in.
Well,
Well,
listen,
we'll see
that's
it in July.
that's future use problem.
Yep.
Um, Speaking of necks, I I had gotten this massage in February before my Toronto show because I was in a lot of neck
Right.
pain, and I think I mentioned it on the show that bless this woman, she went. I'll say it too deep.
Mm.
She went too deep. It's very rare for me to, and I had said I'm a bit of a wimp. Like I had said ahead of time. Like it wasn't like I was like really give it to me. Like I was like, you know,
Sure.
moderate, and I was
Yeah.
giving feedback throughout that I was like, ooh, that's a little much. Like I was speaking up for myself.
Hmm.
Kudos to me. um
Yes.
but that woman said something to me that chilled me to my core, and what that woman told me was I should not be sleeping with any pillow. She's like, I think you need to start training yourself to sleep without a pillow.
Get out.
She's like, that's what I do. I don't have a pillow at all. It's great for your neck. Here's a couple of things I'm going to say about that. Number one, I'd rather die. Number two, number two,
Hmm.
I just think, I just think there is like a feeling of, and I want to preface this by saying, if you sleep without a pillow, God bless. I want anything for you that you want for you. So
Of
so this is not a
course.
judgment. For me, I just think that will throw me into a depression. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I just
Yeah.
think for me it's like a psychological thing.
Hmm.
I don't know. No
Oh,
pillow? Can you imagine?
I love my pillow. There's no way. And then when I was having this issue with my neck, I crammed like the pillow and made sure it was
Hmm.
in a very specific spot to balance me out. And now, like, I actually have the range of motion. It's just a very tiny, like almost like a bruise kind of thing
I feel
under my
like you might have done
skin.
something to a nerve.
Oh, it was not great. There were moments where I was like walking around like I was in a body cast. It wasn't great. My husband had suggested that I go for like a professional massage. And that's when I had to tell him I didn't put it on my list of fears, but having someone I don't know touch my body in that way, no,
Huh.
no. I just the idea of a stranger's hands working my flesh just I can't like
Working my flesh. Well, when you put it that way.
that's how it feels. Like I just can't. The thought of it, like immediately, I'm just like hot sweats, cold sweats. Can't think about like, oh,
Even
I
if it's
don't
a
want
woman?
it. Oh yeah, even if it's a woman, like I
Huh.
don't think I could. Nope. Like I don't know. I was like, I don't. I've never been interested. I've
Interesting.
the
See,
like.
I don't ever want a man I don't know to do it. And
Sure.
I have had a male masseuse one time, and it was not relaxing. I just, it's too, I don't know. I find it feelings violating, but a woman I'm okay with.
Oh yeah, I'm just like any stranger, stranger danger. I can't do
Mm,
it.
mm.
And so then it was like, if I can't go to a stranger, you're up, stud. So it's like so sorry, man. There's literally nobody else. Good for you.
I just think, I've had my text tone for Christy for some time been when she was trying to place the name of Michael Douglas, and she said, pussy throat cancer. Um, but I'm gonna be honest, I might need to switch it out to working my flesh.
Yeah, sure, sure. That's all a massage is to me. Like as soon as you say massage, I immediately think of like a cartoon character like working dough with their little fingers and it creeps me out. I'm just grossed out. And immediately I'm like, no, I can't do that. And so I don't know what's gonna happen. I can't go like another almost month being down with an injury, a sleep injury, which is the most embarrassing. But the
Wow.
worst, the entire time, like being awake during the day, you kind of just like you turn with your shoulders, you figure it out. It was the overnight where I would go to roll and I would have to wake myself up completely so that I would roll my body properly because it was a nightmare. So I was probably not great to live with for a while there. Not sleeping well, always in pain, kind of grumpy, nothing seemed to be working. Um, but I did do an ice bag, and that was a delight. My husband felt maybe I went too long because he's like, "Your neck should not be this cold." I'm like, "But it feels nice."
What if we gave you like some Xanax or something?
I don't know if there's enough.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, I did the you'll love this is too much information.
Huh?
I was like, well, Robaxaset's gonna help. So
Yeah,
it's a muscle, right? Like this is a muscle
yeah.
thing. It's gotta be. Made me physically ill.
Don't tell me that. Robaxiside is one of my truest loves in this world.
Well, and I took some not long ago because people were like, hey, guess what? Cramps are just like muscle cramps. So, like, try it out. And I tried it out and it was beautiful. So I'm like, great, love this. And then I was like, well, for a neck pain, I'm like, I'm absolutely going to try it again. And then I was so ill that I was like,
Like to your
no,
sick to your stomach?
yeah. I was
Did
like,
you take it with
never
food?
again. I did. I take
Maybe then
almost
take.
everything with food.
Maybe next time don't take it with food then.
I don't know how I took it the like months ago when I took it, but it was like I took one dose months ago and then I took one like during in the middle of this weeks
I
of
love
hell.
that
And
I'm like such a fan of the product that I'm like,
yeah.
well, don't write it off completely. Try it one more time on an empty stomach. See if that helps.
Oh, I'm absolutely convinced that my anxiety overtaking I think I was just anxious and that's why I got sick. But it's
May
just
I recommend Lexapro?
yeah. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. It's nice. It doesn't dull you. It's nice. I
I like
shouldn't
it.
be I shouldn't be promoting a name brand pharmaceutical, not my style at all. Again, to each their own, but all I'm saying is it's been a game changer for me.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love I love that it's like, oh God, I I found this medication makes me feel great, and I'm like, I took some, it made me ill. And it's like
Mm.
you don't always have to be Debbie Downer, Christy. You can just also be like, that's beautiful. There's got to be something positive I can say. When I think I already did like an edit on my list of fears, but I had mentioned birds,
Hmm.
and I want to remove ducks specifically from that list. Um,
Wait, so all birds but ducks.
Correct.
Okay.
All birds, especially Canadian geese, they know why. Um, but not, but I'm removing ducks completely because I know I've always been charmed by ducks. I like the way they walk. I like their little faces. I want to like pet them so bad, but you don't pet a wild animal. But we were driving somewhere and there was like a little like boy and girl duck because there was like the mallard and the drake. Is that no? I don't know. There was the very you could tell there was like a mallard and then you could tell there was the all brown. Um and they were just like standing on the side of the road like they were on a date. And I was so completely charmed to the point where I now follow, I believe the name is Cheese and Quacker on Instagram. And it's this adorable young couple who have ducks. And what I like about them is these these animals are very well cared for. They're not like we're just keeping them for the gram, and maybe they are, but they're treating the animals well. And my favorite thing in the world is watching ducks eat peas because they love peas and it's beautiful to see. But they all have little names and I love them so much. They recently got baby ducks and she was holding them up to the camera like they're fitting in her hand, and she's holding them up and their little faces are just so fucking cute, and she's holding them each up and giving their names. And one, she holds him up and she says his name, and I love that I already forget what his name was, and he just closes his eyes and tilts his head, and I was like, I'm done. I want a duck. I want to pet these ducks. I love them so much. So ducks are safe. All other birds, all other birds,
Fair.
especially Canadian geese.
What
You got to
about
watch them.
what about not a Canadian goose, but what about a goose? Just a normal goose.
I don't know. I don't love their hissing.
What about a swan?
I don't know. I She's not asking what one do you want? Like, she's not going to say one, and then if you say yes, it's going to come out of a door. Like,
Yeah,
you
no.
can
I
calm
mean,
down.
by the way,
Yeah.
we don't have to test this ever, you know.
Yeah. I think for me, it's ducks are very low to the ground. I like that, and I like their little like waddle that they do, and I'm very charmed by that. And their down, is it down like on their little feathers? Their down looks very soft, and I wanna pet it. I don't think I would pet a swan.
Really?
I guess. I didn't think this is one of those like rapid fire where you're like, how do I feel about something? How, on that episode of Friends when Phoebe and Joey were doing the road trip and she was teaching him that like super fast question to find out how you really feel about something. Apparently, that's how I feel about swans. No thanks.
Huh. I just feel like they're so majestic and I feel like they're duck adjacent,
Oh,
but maybe I'm wrong.
I
I mean, the
think
ugly duckling, the
I
swan,
can't
you know.
believe I'm saying this. I think they're too tall. Beautiful creatures from afar. I
Sure.
think I would be too scared to get too close to one. Whereas a duck, I would be like, I will army crawl to get close to you, whatever's close for comfort for you. Like
Now, I did get nipped by a little black swan once.
mm,
It came out of
same.
the water, nipped my toe, and went back. That was when I was a kid. Like it came for me, but it was very small. It wasn't tall. It may have been a
Mhm.
young. I don't know why it targeted me. But then when I was a little bit older, I got bit by an emu through a fence.
You've been bitten by many animals.
Yeah, I was bit in the face by a sheepdog as a small
Right.
child. Yeah. We're lucky that didn't turn out worse for me, by the way. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
There was also a tiger cub, wasn't there?
That was a scratch. It was a
So
mountain
sorry.
lion cub. Mountain lion
So
cub.
sorry.
Yes.
I
That was
remembered
at
that
Jungle
being a
Cat
big,
World
I
when I was
remembered
a
a big cat.
young
Yeah.
child. This was in the 80s, okay? So there was a different set of standards, i.e.
Of course.
none. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's
Huh.
interesting that again, I'm such an animal person and I have had some run-ins.
It's shocking that they over like that whole part of your youth did not turn you off, you know, animals.
No. Part of me feels like it was all a test.
Sure.
You know?
Huh.
Because now I am one of those people that like a dog will gravitate to. You know what I mean? I am one of those people
Oh,
that a cat will
sure.
come to. Like I am one of those people that like babies. Babies love me too. Babies
Sure.
love me. Yeah.
Sure. So you had to go through being nipped
Yeah.
and I'll say it, attacked throughout your youth
Yeah.
to fully grow into your Disney princess.
I think so. And I think
Wow.
part of it too is I hold a respect for the animals. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh,
I'm like
sure.
I know what you're capable of.
And that's probably it.
Yeah. But I'm not going to show fear.
Those moments taught you respect.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying you had to go through that to be where you are now, but yeah. I
But I got to
don't
tell you something.
recall any like negative run-ins with animals.
Well, what's interesting is you have so many you're afraid of on your list.
Yeah. Yeah,
Has
which
ne-
is
has never had a
wild.
negative run-in with an animal. Is
No.
fearful of many.
Yeah. Huh. I mean, yeah, when have I ever Oh, fuck. I said all birds. I guess I have to take penguins off the list.
See, there's some
I'm
flaws to this list. You know what
I'm
I
not scared of penguins. Penguins are adorable. So okay, penguins
What
can
about a puffin? Are you scared of a puffin?
I don't know. That is a sharp beak. How close am I getting to a puffin? Like,
Also, they all have sharp beaks. But penguin is a sharp beak.
oh, a duck could take a finger off, I think, if it tried. But I don't, for some reason, I don't see them like that. Their little eyes, I don't know what it is about ducks, but I'm incredibly charmed. Again,
Ducks and penguins. I'm
yeah,
shocked that puffins aren't on the safe list.
like they are little, right? I don't know.
I mean, my dream,
Yeah,
because a puffin is one of my very favorite animals. My
of
dream is to
course.
to see them in the wild. And if you go to Iceland when they're in hatching season, they get lost. The pufflings get lost, and then you can go and be a part of the people that if you find one, then you're supposed to take it to a cliff and you throw it off and it flies. It's a whole thing.
Okay, couple of things. One, Iceland
Yeah,
is where
I
you said.
know.
Okay, two, would you do this?
Oh, it's on my
Would you
that's
absolutely
on
go
my
to
list
Iceland to do this? And
specifically
also
to do this. Yes.
this sounds very much like sea turtle babies when they're coming out of the little, I don't know why this wavy finger,
Mm-hmm.
jazz finger thing I was doing was supposed to
Mm-hmm.
signify hatching from eggs. But when they come out of the eggs and then they go down the beach,
Mm-hmm.
I've heard about things like those. But I did not realize puffins were like Iceland.
Ireland and Iceland.
No kidding. I just
Mm-hmm.
assumed Eastern Canada. No reason.
Do they have them in Eastern Canada?
Doesn't a maritime have them?
I don't
No,
know.
I don't know.
Well, we'll find out. But I will say this: well, you know that the lore in the Star Wars world is they were shooting in Ireland, and there was so many puffins. They were like, we can't paint all of these out. There's too many puffins. Like it was getting tough. So that's why they developed porgs. So they turned the puffins into porgs in post.
Okay, again, couple of things. Well, is that why you love pork so much?
Well, I didn't know that when I discovered porgs, and I loved porgs immediately. And then it just made sense to me that I
That
was
you
like,
would
oh,
gravitate to them.
yeah.
Secondly, I just hope you caught yourself when you said, "Don't you know the lore? The Star Wars?"
Oh, I thought you might have heard that story before. Not the
No,
actual Star Wars story, but just the filming.
I know pretty much nothing about any filming of any Star Wars.
Got it.
So yeah, I was very charmed that you thought I might know that. And I don't know why, but made me feel cool. Um,
Oh
I
my God. Listen, how dare I? Puffins are found in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Hey.
Uh, so guess what? I guess maybe I don't need to go to Iceland.
Oh, you want to see the hatchlings?
Yeah, that's a whole different thing. Um, Look, I guess what I'm saying is if you're a listener and you live in Newfoundland, Labrador, talk to me about the puffin situation. Let us know in the comments, like, what are we looking at? Is there a puffling season for you? Do you pick up
Oh,
pufflings and then throw them? I also feel like that would be nerve-wracking to just like throw a baby bird into the air and hope for the best. But I
oh
have
yeah,
to
not
believe that,
that's nope. I can't be responsible for that.
yeah.
I I would the pressure I would put on myself. I couldn't. I mean, I love this for you, and I love that it's was specifically Iceland we were talking about because they are my number one at Eurovision this year.
And just like that.
And it's what I'm hoping we're putting the energy out there because that song slaps. There's a beat to it that makes me feel like I'm suddenly 19 again. And all I want to do is grab some sort of vodka drink and jump around.
I also just need to let you know a little something, and I say this to
Yeah.
protect you. I had a youth come for me on TikTok because I used the word slaps and they said we stopped using that in 2024. So apparently,
Now, by we, did that person mean the youth?
correct.
Oh, then fuck it. I'm not youth. Look, they can be like, we don't use that anymore. And it's like, mm-hmm. But we don't mean everybody.
Yeah. Listen,
I mean, I
no
do
one,
appreciate you looking out for me.
I'm just looking out for you. I just want you to have
Yeah.
I want you to have the 411. That's all it is.
Oh, oh God. Okay, wait. It's right there. It's right there.
Mhm.
I've got the 411, and you are not going out and getting jiggy with some boy. I don't care how dope his ride is.
That's it. That's
Those
it.
damn Dawson's River kids sleeping in each other's beds. He is the one of the greatest characters of all time.
Oh, without question. What you drinking over there?
The very ends of a Slurpee. I'm actually going to be pretty disappointed in myself when it runs out.
Well, because I had a bit of an upset stomach, I thought have a glass of wine, and for some reason, it's helped. So anyone who says,
Oh, maybe the bubbly. Maybe
it
that
wasn't
helped.
bubbly. It was
Oh
not
yeah, I
bubbly.
guess
This is,
wine isn't bubbly.
yeah, no, but it
Something
has
about the
somehow settled
grapes.
my stomach. I don't know why. Anyway,
Huh.
what I'm
Whatever
hearing
works for
is,
you.
what I'm hearing is less salad, more wine, and I couldn't be happier.
Makes
On that
sense.
note, we're discussing Malcolm and Eleanor Graham on this episode of the show. I don't know anything about this case, but have no fear, Christie's synopsis is right here. In the summer of 1974, Malcolm and Eleanor Graham sailed to a series of small islands in the South Pacific called Palmyra. Did I do that right?
Yeah,
Beautiful.
did it great.
Their plan was to stay for a year, but after just 3 months, the couple stopped responding to radio calls. 2 months later, the Graham's boat sailed into a harbor in Hawaii with a new paint job, a new name, and two new owners. So, what happened to Malcolm and Eleanor Graham? Who took their boat? And why is their case not officially solved? Christy Oxborrow investigates.
I'm gonna give the heads up because there's no disclaimer in this episode. Um, I did call the episode Malcolm and Eleanor, but as I got into research, I found literally everybody, anyone who's ever done the case, anyone close to them, investigators, everybody calls them by nicknames. So
Okay.
I'm going to refer to them as their nicknames throughout the episode. Of course, I'll explain the nicknames. Well, I won't explain them. I'll say what the nicknames are. As for explaining them, your guess is as good as mine. So, Malcolm Graham III, better known as Mac, was born April 13th, 1931 in Connecticut. He attended college in Michigan and in the 1950s took a job at General Motors. When Mac's uncle died, he left Mac a trust, which Mac used to pursue his dream of sailing. In the late 50s, Mac moved to San Diego, where he met Eleanor Laverne Eddington, better known as Muff, born December 18th, 1931, in Colorado. I don't know why she was called that. I don't know how we got from Eleanor to that, but it just is what it is.
Is what it is.
So, Mac and Muff quickly fell in love and were married in Mexico in 1961. And to celebrate their marriage, they took a 6-year-long honeymoon sailing around the world.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, Sailing specifically in their 37.5-foot ketch called the Sea Wind. Did I end up reading about types of boats? Yes. Is most of that information useful for this episode? No. But for today's purposes, just know that a ketch, Ketch, is basically a sailboat with two masts. I'm not going to get into it further because it doesn't matter for this at all. But I just wanted people to know. I looked it up.
I like it.
So in the late 60s, the Grahams returned to San Diego, where Mac worked at a boat building and remodeling business called Underwood's Marina. Mac then started to plan out their next sailing adventure, this time a 2-year trip to the South Pacific. The plan was to sail to Hawaii, where they would dock for a month, then on to Palmyra Atoll, a series of small islands about 1,000 miles south of Honolulu. They'd stay on Palmyra for 6 to 12 months before moving on to Tahiti and other South Pacific islands. And while the Grahams spent a year planning and preparing for the trip, Muff had concerns about it as their lengthy honeymoon trip had a few hiccups. And when I say hiccups, I mean, little things like a typhoon in the South Pacific and a near run in with pirates in the Mediterranean.
Oh boy.
So Muff had concerns, but was also eager to settle down on dry land and start a family. Mac was adamant about going on the trip, but agreed to planting roots once they got home. Since they were very experienced sailors, Mac and Muff had packed enough supplies to last a year. The boat was equipped with auxiliary engines, a radio, tools, first aid equipment, and dental tools. And if the idea of being out in the middle of the ocean didn't scare me enough, the idea of having to do your own dental work in case of an emergency might send me right over the edge. It's giving castaway ice skate vibes, and I'm horrified. Kudos to them for being prepared. Because really, if you're in the middle of the ocean, what else are you going to do? Um, but this just proves I am not built for a life at sea. The combination of small confined spaces, deep water, and large waves, I was already a no thank you. Adding the possibility of ever having to perform emergency dental surgery on myself or someone else, hard pass. If that's your life, good for you. It's not for everybody. And I think we should all be okay with that. Oh God, I can't. I mean, I think but I can't begin to tell you how much I've unraveled since learning that. Just the simple, just to know they had it, just in case. Brr. Oh, so in the spring of 1974, Mac and Muff set out towards Hawaii, arriving in Waikiki. Sorry, nope, arriving in Kauai. There we go. On May 25th. On June 1st, they headed to Hilo, which is the capital city on the Big Island. Here, Mac met a fellow yachtsman named Kurt Schumacher. The two men quickly became friends, and when Mac said they were heading to Palmyra, the men agreed to stay in touch with weekly calls over the radio every Wednesday at 7 p.m. After replenishing supplies in Hawaii, Mac and Muff set out on June 24th for Palmyra Atoll. What the heck is Palmyra? You know your girl got the deets side note. What the fuck, Christy?
I'm in.
I'm such a nerd. It's fine. So, Palmyra Atoll is a series of small islands and islets that encircle three lagoons in the South Pacific. It's located about 1,000 miles south of Hawaii and is surrounded by more than 16,000 acres of coral reef. In fact, it is described as one of the most diverse and intact coral reef ecosystems in the world. It is home to 3 times the number of coral species found in Hawaii and the Caribbean, and 5 times more than the Florida Keys. Palmyra is incredibly isolated and has no consistent population. However, during World War II, 6,000 soldiers were stationed there by the U.S. Navy, which used the area for training and refueling. Henry E. Cooper, a Hawaii Circuit Court judge, purchased Palmyra in 1911 for $750, which is equivalent to just over $25,000 in 2025. 11 years later, Cooper sold it to the Fullard Leo family for $15,000, which is quite the jump. But
Yeah.
that's nearly $286,000 in 2025. The Fullard Leo family struggled with legal battles over the rightful ownership of the area because the United States thought they should have it. The legal battles got so stressful and intense that one of the Fullard Leo's sons, who was a Hollywood actor at the time, quit acting to focus solely on the never ending lawsuits they were having with the US government. For those who are curious, the actor went by the name Leslie Vincent and did 22 movies in the
Oh.
40s before his retirement. After World War II ended in 1945, the U.S. wanted to keep controlling the land, but the lawsuit, which was settled by the Supreme Court in 1947, gave full ownership back to the Fullard Leos. Their actor son then got into the hotel business in Hawaii and later appeared on a single episode of Hawaii Five-O in the early 70s.
Hmm.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the Navy really left Palmyra in a bit of a mess. Not only did they cut down thousands of coconut trees and then dump ammo and various chemicals into the lagoons, they also left behind debris and scrap and buildings like storage sheds with live dynamite and ammunition. Just little things, you know?
Mm.
Oh, and something else the Navy brought: rats. So many rats that eventually like took over the entire area and became very problematic to the point where like a group had to go in 2020 to remove the rats. Ah, ah. So, so because of the mess that was left behind, the Fullard Leos were awarded $100,000 in 1950 for damages that had been done. The family continued to own Palmyra until 2000, when they sold it to the Nature Conservancy and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for $30 million.
Wow.
The area, including 12 miles of the surrounding waters, are now permanently protected. So that's something.
Yeah.
So while at Palmyra Atoll, because it's too small to be an island, I wish it could be an island. The amount of times I would have just said the island would have been so much nicer, but it is what it is. So it's pretty to look at. It's just not really a place that people tend to stay for very long, especially in the 70s. It was more like a stopping point that sailors used to get fresh water and to take a break from being cooped up on a boat. But for whatever reason, Mac and Muff were interested in staying at Palmyra for a year, and they had both the supplies and the experience to pull it off. But when they first arrived on Palmyra, they discovered they weren't alone. 36-year-old Roy Allen and his girlfriend, 28-year-old Stephanie Stearns, had arrived just 2 days earlier on their 30-foot sloop called Iola. What the fuck's a sloop? Well, unlike a ketch, it only has one mast. It's also simpler to operate, but not as balanced and stable as a ketch. And I promise that's the end of my boat knowledge.
I love it. So I'm here to learn.
Well, thank God, because if nothing else, I've got information. Um, so Roy and Stephanie planned to live on Palmyra for 2 years. They packed 6 months worth of food and hoped to plant some vegetables and live off the land once their food ran out. They also brought 150 pounds of dog food for their 3 dogs. They had a smaller dog. I don't know the breed. It was named Puffer. They had a lab cross named Sista and a pit bull named Popolo. Popolo. The plan was to grow marijuana, and then friends of theirs would come from Hawaii, pick up the marijuana, and take it back and sell it in Hawaii. Sure. Unfortunately, the boat Iola was in very rough shape. There was a crack in the hull. It was taking on water. The motor froze up before they even reached Palmyra. The trip from Hawaii by boat typically takes about a week. But since Roy and Stephanie were inexperienced sailors, they got lost along the way, and the trip ended up taking nearly a month.
Oh my
So
God.
by the time they actually arrived, they'd used up all of their fuel and almost all of their food. There is one boat anchorage for all of Palmyra, or at least at the time there was. It's located on the West Lagoon and only accessible through a narrow artificial channel. So when attempting to get to the anchorage, Roy and Stephanie got the boat stuck on the coral reef. Other sailors saw their boat and offered to help, but Roy and Stephanie refused. After being stuck with little to no food or water for 3 days, they finally accepted help from 2 men who used motorized dinghies to tow the Iola into the lagoon. But once they got to land, it was obvious that Roy and Stephanie were in over their heads. When they planted seeds to grow a vegetable garden, the plants were destroyed by sand crabs. They had little money, so they had to barter with other people for food. And since everyone sailing into the area was bringing limited supplies with them, there wasn't exactly a ton of extra to go around. Roy and Stephanie tried to survive on coconuts and fish, but to get the coconuts, they cut down the entire tree, which I don't have to tell you is not sustainable for getting coconuts. Um, and to get the fish, instead of a standard fishing practice, Roy would just shoot them with his 22 caliber gun. Yeah. The couple ended up asking other people for food so often, it was starting to wear on everyone who stayed in the area. Tensions grew, and even the Grahams became frustrated. When Muff wrote letters home to friends, she often mentioned how uncomfortable she felt having Roy and Stephanie around. Not to mention, Roy and Stephanie's dogs quickly became a problem, or more specifically, I guess, Roy's dogs, because it was the larger two. They started becoming aggressive towards people. In July, the pit bull outright attacked Muff Graham. Um, Roy never apologized. I don't know if she was injured at all in that, but still, an apology, would have been nice. During their weekly radio chats, Mac often complained to Kurt Schumacher about Roy and Stephanie, saying they were in over their heads, desperate for food. So Kurt warned Mac that it's like, you got to be careful about people who get desperate. And Mac said he had a Magnum handgun, so he wasn't concerned. Mac said he believed Roy and Stephanie would soon be miserable enough they would head back to Hawaii. In August, sailing partners Norm Sanders and Tom Wolfe arrived at Palmyra. The plan was to stay a week, but after spending just one day around Roy, Norm wanted to leave. He was particularly uncomfortable with the way that Roy was shooting at fish. Uh, you know, uh, just a dude shooting into the water. I get it. Norm and Tom left on August 17th, leaving Roy, Stephanie, Mac, and Muff as the only people on Palmyra. On Wednesday, August 28th, Mac had his weekly call with Kurt Schumacher. Partway through the chat, Mac said he could hear a dinghy coming towards his boat. He said Stephanie was coming over with a cake, so they were probably, and his words were, declaring a truce. The use of the word truce, of course, suggests there was some sort of argument between the couples at the time. Kurt said he could hear laughter and a woman speaking. Mac said, I better go find out what's happening, and then signed off. When Kurt tried to contact Mac the following Wednesday, Mac didn't respond. Kurt grew concerned because that was the first week that Mac had ever missed in the nearly 3 months that they had been communicating, but the authorities weren't convinced that anything was wrong. Kurt refused to ignore his gut and continued to try and reach Mac on the radio, but never got a response. On September 11th, Kurt asked a friend named Martin to do a flyover of Palmyra, and Martin said there were no boats in that area whatsoever and absolutely no signs of life on land. Then on October 28th, 2 months after the Grahams were last heard from, a mysterious boat was spotted at the Alawai Yacht Club in Waikiki on the island of Oahu. It was painted lavender and had no nameplate or home port on the stern, which was very unusual. According to records, it was called Lokahi and built by Roy Allen. And if that isn't suspicious enough, it anchored further out of the harbor so that it could really keep a distance from all the other boats. Well, Bernard Leonard, who is a friend of the Grahams and had a boat at the harbor, said even with the new paint job, the boat was easy to identify as the Sea Wind based on the shape, the sails, and the physical alterations that Mac had made. So Bernard contacts the Coast Guard, who in turn contact the FBI. Agents, including Calvin Shishido, came out to inspect the boat, but no one was on it, so they did a stakeout and waited in the harbor in an unmarked boat. The following day, they spotted a man and woman on a rowboat headed towards the Seawind. When they saw the police, they quickly rowed to the nearest dock. The man got out onto the dock and started running. The woman rowed the boat back towards shore. When two plainclothes police officers approached the man, he dove off the dock into the water, dropping his wallet when he jumped. Police checked the wallet. Sure enough, the ID said Roy Allen. The Coast Guard got involved and followed the woman on the rowboat. She made it to the dock. She got out and ran towards the nearby Ilikai Marina Hotel, where officers found her hiding in a stairwell behind a potted plant.
Oh, come on, lady.
I have had dreams where I've been hiding somewhere and I'm like, they're going to see me. And then I'm like, but what if they didn't? And it's like, they're absolutely going to see me. That's how it feels to hide behind a plant. The woman was taken into custody where she was officially identified as Stephanie Stearns. Stephanie said on August 30th, Mac and Muff invited Stephanie and Roy to dinner. The couple said they were going to go fishing first, so they might be late coming back, and they told Stephanie and Roy to make themselves at home on the boat. Stephanie said they arrived at 6:30 p.m., but Mac and Muff weren't there. She said they waited on the Seawind all night, but Mac and Muff never showed. The next day, they went looking for the couple when they discovered the Graham's Zodiac dinghy capsized in the water. Stephanie claimed they searched for days, but found no sign of Mac or Muff Graham. Stephanie and Roy tried to leave Palmyra on the Iola, but they got it caught on the reef, so they just decided to take the Seawind instead. In her official police statement, Stephanie said they searched for the Grahams until September 11th and decided they must have drowned. She said she didn't know how to operate a radio, so they couldn't call for help. She said they left Palmyra. They tried to tow the Iola with the Seawind, but it got caught on a reef, so they had to abandon it. Well, that's already different than her initial story because when she was first caught, Stephanie said she tried to leave Palmyra on the Iola when it got stuck and they switched boats. Now she's saying, well, they took the Seawind right away and tried to tow their old boat and then it got stuck. But again, someone did a flyby at that time and there were no boats at all. But either way, she claims they left the Iola stuck on the reef. But again, there were no boats in that area. So what happened to the Iola? As of this record, it has never been found. Stephanie said that since the Grahams had told them to make themselves at home, she believed that meant if anything happened to them, well, they wanted Stephanie and Roy to have their boat. That feels, I don't know, like a bit of a stretch to me. According to Stephanie, they left Kauai on October 12th. They went to Oahu on October 15th. They stayed for a week, then headed to the Kihei Lagoon on October 21st, where they dry docked for a week and repainted the boat. On October 28th, they arrived in the Alawai Yacht Harbor. Stephanie said they didn't tell anyone about the Graham's accident because they believed the authorities would take the boat from them.
Yeah, that's probably a fair thing to believe.
Yeah. She also admitted to taking $400 that they had found on the boat, including $100 that they got from Mac's wallet, which was stowed under the floorboards. $400 in 1974 is close to $2,600 in 2025. When asked why they ran from police, Stephanie said she was protecting Roy. Well, protecting Roy from what? Well, the day Stephanie was captured, Roy jumped into the water to evade the police. It's just like a cartoon. He hid under the dock until the police left the area, swam to shore, and went to a friend's house where he spent the night. The next day, using the alias Joe Evans, Roy flew to Hilo, where he met with his friend Gina Allen. Months prior, before the trip to Palmyra, Roy had convinced Gina to give him her husband Roy's birth certificate, which this fake Roy used to get a passport and driver's license with Roy Allen's name and fake Roy Allen's face. The real Roy Allen was a former professional cowboy in the radio circuit. Sadly, the real Roy was kicked in the head by a bull in the late 60s and had been confined to a veterans hospital in Tennessee ever since. So when fake Roy asked for the ID, the real Roy's wife, Gina, didn't think it was a big deal. And when fake Roy showed up needing help in late October 1974, Gina gave him camping equipment, food, clothing, and cigarettes, and drove him up to the Kohala Mountains. Fake Roy camped out for a week, then hitchhiked down the mountains, checked into a hotel under the name Joe Evans. Police spotted him, and he was arrested November 8th. So who is this man masquerading as Roy Allen and Joe Evans? Well, when FBI agent Calvin Shishido showed fake Roy's ID to an agent at the DEA, they immediately recognized him as wanted fugitive Buck Walker. 6 months prior, Buck had been arrested for selling drugs to an undercover cop. He pleaded guilty to drug charges but skipped town before his sentencing hearing. But Buck's criminal record goes back a lot further than just 6 months. His first arrest was in Oregon when he was 12.
Whoa.
Yeah, unfortunately, there is no record of the exact charge, but he was sent to juvenile detention, where he escaped a year later. Then at 14, Buck was arrested twice on joyriding charges, followed by 2 more escapes from juvenile detention, another joyriding charge, and an arrest for grand theft auto, all before the age of 16.
Wow.
Then at 16, Buck was arrested for a robbery. At 17, he was arrested for 2 burglaries. And for those who are curious about the difference between a robbery and a robbery involves stealing through force or fear. A burglary involves entering a structure to commit a crime. Because I know those words are often used interchangeably.
Yes.
So, there you go. Nothing but the facts. At just 18, Buck was arrested and convicted of armed robbery. He was sentenced to 5 years at San Quentin. He was released in 1961 and just 7 months later, arrested for a burglary in Los Angeles. Buck then spent time at a mental hospital, which he told Stephanie was only so that he could just avoid going to San Quentin. Buck and Stephanie met in 1972. In late 1973, Buck was caught selling ecstasy to an undercover police officer. Stephanie, who was blocks away at the time at a laundromat, somehow also got charged in that deal, but her charges were eventually dropped. Prior to that, Stephanie's only legal troubles were a couple of convictions for shoplifting in 1969 and 1973. So in April 1974, Buck and Stephanie bought the Iola in Maui. After pleading guilty to his drug charges, they sailed to Kauai in May, where they prepared for their journey to Palmyra. The plan was to spend 2 years there, but again, they only took 6 months worth of food, believing that they could just live off the land after that. And as I mentioned earlier, that plan fell apart pretty quick. Buck told police the Grahams invited him and Stephanie for dinner at 6:30 p.m. He said they arrived at the Seawind at 6, but the Grahams weren't there. Buck said they waited in their dinghy until 6:30, and then they finally boarded the Grahams' boat. They spent the entire night on the Seawind, but Mac and Muff never showed. Buck said the following day they found the Grahams' Zodiac dinghy about 100 yards west of the Seawind. The police interrupted him and went, "Well, if it's 100 yards, you probably would have seen it from the sea wind." So Buck went, "I mean half a mile." Yeah.
Okay.
So convenient to change the story when someone goes, "That's not right." Um, Buck said that the Zodiac was capsized. He said it didn't seem damaged. The engine was still working. He said they planned to tow the Iola, but got stuck on a reef, so they chose to leave it behind. He also stated that they painted the boat because a swordfish had rammed the boat and caused a hole that Buck needed to repair. While investigators inspected the boat, they found no signs of any repairs to the hull. Buck Walker and Stephanie Stearns were both arrested and charged with the theft of the Seawind, theft of the $400, and transportation of stolen property in interstate commerce, which is a fancy way of saying they moved the boat and its contents to another location, none of which, belong to them. And I know you've been waiting a while to hear this detail. When police searched the Seawind, they found all 3 dogs alive and well.
Thank God.
Yeah, I just wanted people to know the dogs are okay. On November 1st, a group including 2 FBI agents, the Honolulu Assistant U.S. Attorney, an island guide, and several Coast Guard divers headed to Palmyra to search for Mac and Muff Graham. They discovered an old campfire which appeared to have burned remnants of clothing, a pair of eyeglasses, and a wig, interestingly enough. They
Mm.
also found a crop of foot-high marijuana plants, and Buck's tent was still set up on land, almost as though Buck and Stephanie were in a hurry when they left. On the land, the group discovered a warehouse that had been built by the U.S. Navy during World War II. Inside was an old sea rescue boat, which had 4 compartments to fit a metal box that held supplies. 2 of the boxes were in the boat. The other 2 boxes were missing. So the Coast Guard divers searched the lagoon. There is no sign of Mac or Muff Graham. And while both Buck and Stephanie claimed they left the Iola stuck on the reef, there was no sign of their boat either. In December 1974, Buck appeared in court for sentencing on the previous drug charge that he had run from. He was given the maximum sentence of 5 years. As for the newest charges, Stephanie's lawyer filed a motion for the couple to be tried separately. Stephanie's trial went first in June 1975. Stephanie testified she and Buck had found the Graham's Zodiac dinghy capsized in the lagoon, so they just assumed that Mac and Muff had drowned. However, the Zodiac was examined by a small engine expert who said there is no evidence that that boat's engine had ever been submerged in water, which is absolutely what would have happened if it had been upside down. The expert described the Zodiac as, quote, the most stable watercraft you can buy, suggesting it would have been nearly impossible to tip over. So the odds of them falling out of that boat would have been pretty low. Um, when asked why they took the Seawind, Stephanie testified they took the boat to protect it from vandals, and their plan was to return it to Mac's sister. Well, if that's true, then why did you repaint it, and why did Roy register it under another name? In the end, Stephanie was found guilty on all 3 counts of theft. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison for the boat theft and 5 years probation for the other 2 charges. Buck's trial took place in December 1975. For the most part, he gave the same story as Stephanie, them being invited to dinner, showing up, the Grahams were missing, the next day finding the capsized dinghy. Buck testified that the Iola got stuck on the reef, but he managed to get it free, so they were going to tow it back to Hawaii, but then it started to take on water, so they decided to leave it and just take the Seawind on its own. I just want to note that Buck initially told police that they only took the Seawind because the Iola was stuck and they couldn't get it unstuck. And now he's saying, it got stuck. I did get it free, but it was just too damaged.
Mm.
So it's, did you leave the boat stuck on the reef or did you get it unstuck? It feels like that would be a thing you'd remember. Buck was found guilty on all 3 counts of theft and sentenced to 10 years. However, the sentence was meant to start after his current 5-year sentence. Buck was sent to the McNeil Island Federal Penitentiary in Washington State, while Stephanie was sent to a correctional facility in Long Beach, California. She spent 7 months in prison before being transferred to a halfway house in Santa Barbara. She was released in February 1978 after serving just under a year. She got a job as a secretary before becoming a recruiter for the Van Nuys law firm that her uncle co-owned. Stephanie eventually bought a house in Simi Valley and got a job as an office manager for a telecommunications company. So life for Stephanie just kind of moved on. Buck was in jail, but meanwhile, Mac and Muff's friends and family struggled without answers as to what happened to their loved ones. FBI agent Calvin Shishido believes that Roy and Stephanie killed the Grahams, put them on the Iola, and sunk the boat. However, without any bodies, they didn't believe they had enough of a case to press charges. Then in November 1980, South African couple Robert and Sharon Jordan arrived on Palmyra. They'd been sailing across the world on a boat that Robert built himself. I don't know Robert from what I read, though. God, he was proud of that boat. So in January 1981, so they were on this island, not island, you know what I mean, for a chunk of time. And in January, Sharon was off exploring the northeast area known as Strawn Island when she discovered a large metal box tipped over on the beach. Near the box was a lid and some wire, which is believed to have been used to attach the lid to the box. Oh, jeez. Right beside the box, Sharon discovered a human skull and some bones. Yeah, not great for, anything.
No.
It kind of looked, because the box was tipped on a side, it looked like the bones had fallen out of the box. Inside the box was a woman's wristwatch, a small piece of cloth, and just so much charring that it looked like the inside of the box had been set on fire. Sharon radioed for help, and a group consisting of Coast Guard, police officers, and FBI, including Agent Calvin Shishido, arrived on Palmyra to investigate right away. Calvin Shishido noted that metal box was identical to the 2 that had been found on the Navy rescue boat that I had mentioned earlier, so it's safe to assume this box, which is believed to have been washed ashore during a storm, was one of the 2 that were missing from that Navy boat. Coast Guard divers searched the lagoon for the second missing box, but they were unable to find it. As for the remains, they were sent to the FBI lab in Washington, D.C. for testing. There was a small round hole on the left temple of the skull, which could indicate a gunshot wound or possibly being bludgeoned. The jaw was broken in 3 places. There was charring around the left eye socket that was believed to be caused by an acetylene torch or like a welding torch. There was also flat abrasions on the left side of the skull, consistent with rubbing back and forth on a flat surface for a long time, as though the skull was in that box in waves and like rubbing back and forth,
Right.
for years. There were minimal animal bites to the remains, meaning that they were not sitting out in the open for very long before Sharon found them. A cause of death could not be determined, especially given it wasn't a complete skeleton, but it is believed the victim was shot or bludgeoned, dismembered, placed in the metal box, and burned. The lid was then wired to the box and dumped into the lagoon. The remains were compared to dental records, and medical examiners were able to positively identify the skull as belonging to Muff Graham.
Mm.
She was just 42 at the time of her death. The FBI lab also tested the aluminum metal box that the remains were found beside. A section of the box was removed, and they discovered human protein in the metal, which proves that those human remains were in fact inside that box. So, I mean, lawyers couldn't be like, well, we don't know if it was in the box. We know it was
Right.
in the box. Testing also showed that the box had been set on fire at some point when the box was sitting in 2 inches of water. With the discovery of Muff's remains, Buck Walker and Stephanie Stearns were charged with first-degree murder. Stephanie turned herself in to the U.S. Marshal's office in Los Angeles, but when the FBI went looking for Buck, they discovered he had escaped from prison more than a year before.
Oh my God.
In October 1979, Buck's case was one of 80 that the FBI gave to the U.S. Marshals, and by early 1981, they just hadn't got around to it yet. In 1979, about 3.5 years into his sentence, Buck escaped. Investigators discovered only one woman had ever visited Buck, and she also happened to visit the day before he disappeared. 39-year-old Ruth Thomas was a married mother of two living in Olympia, Washington. She had joined the Aloha Club, which was a group. I don't know if it was just women or not, but a group of people who went to McNeil Island Prison specifically to cheer up the inmates from Hawaii. It's so oddly specific. I don't know.
Yeah.
You do you. On a trip with this club, Ruth met Buck, clearly became very smitten, so she went back to meet with him privately by herself. The day after Buck escaped, Ruth emptied her family's savings account and disappeared. Of course, the police didn't notice any of this until they actually started looking for Buck nearly 2 years later. So now they know they're looking for Ruth. They traced her car and found it in Yuma, Arizona in August 1981. Ruth was now living under the name Luann Simmons. Buck was going by Sean O'Dougal. And while the two were still living together, I don't know what their relationship status was, because Buck was dating a 19-year-old, even though he was 43.
Gross.
Yeah, yeah. Buck was arrested a week later when police caught him in the middle of a drug deal in a motel parking lot. At the time of his arrest, Buck claimed his name was Frank Wolf. So I don't know how many aliases he has, but
Yeah, for real.
calm down, Buck. You're caught. So just like during their first trials, Buck and Stephanie were tried separately. This time, Buck's trial was first. The prosecution claimed Buck killed Muff and likely Mac as well because he wanted their boat. At the time, the Iola had a broken motor and damage to the hull. The odds of Buck and Stephanie using that boat to leave Palmyra was minimal. The Graham's boat, however, was luxurious in comparison and outfitted with everything they could possibly need. Other people who visited the area described Buck and Stephanie as desperate for food and said they were constantly asking people, and it was starting to wear on everyone. Multiple people left early because they didn't like being around them. Muff sent letters home to her family and mentioned the growing tension amongst everyone on Palmyra, saying it was really frustrating for the experienced sailors who were prepared, and it kind of felt like helping them out, even though they were clearly in over their heads, was just screwing them in the future, because they took a year to plan this and get all the stuff,
Right.
and all of a sudden, if you use that, there's not a quick place you can run and get supplies. Again, like I think the nearest landmass is probably Hawaii, which is like 1,000 miles away. Not specific landmass, but the one that would have like good supplies.
Right.
So, um, I will point out one positive thing for Buck. The only time I think he was ever really prepared. According to the family, those Fullard Leos that I mentioned who actually owned Palmyra, out of all the people who visited Palmyra in 1974, Buck Walker was the only one who contacted the family for actual permission to go.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is impressive that he would think of that. He seems to have thought of literally nothing else. So, in Mac's last radio call with Kurt Schumacher, Mac mentioned something about a truce with Buck and Stephanie, implying there was some sort of altercation or argument along the way. Maybe it was regarding the fact that one of Buck's dogs attacked Muff, or maybe it was something bad had happened since, but the Grahams weren't the only people with strong feelings about Buck and Stephanie. Again, I remind you, Norm and I believe Tom came to the island or the area, planned to stay for a week, could only handle Roy for a day before they had to leave. Um, it should also be noted that Palmyra was a very popular destination for amateur radio operators. They apparently travel to remote locations, broadcast their signal, and then track how many connections they make to other operators and where those connections are located. Well, when Buck and Stephanie first got to Palmyra, there were a few radio operators there, including Rusty Epps and Jack Wheeler. Well, when Rusty first arrived, that's when he saw the Iola stuck on the reef. He was the one who offered to help them get unstuck. Buck and Stephanie said no. Then they waited for 3 days before they finally accepted help. So Rusty and Jack used their dinghies to tow the Iola into the lagoon. Rusty left the following day, as it was always his plan. He was going to travel to Kingman Reef, which is about 33 miles northwest of Palmyra. The plan for Jack was to stay on Palmyra and do the whole radio thing. His family was with him. They were going to have a great time. But shortly after Rusty left, Jack radioed and said, "Hey, sorry, change of plans. My family and I are on our way back to Honolulu." When asked why, Jack said he did not want to be stuck on Palmyra with Buck because Buck made him uncomfortable. And that's not surprising when Buck was using a 22 caliber handgun to shoot at fish. A man desperate for food with nothing but a gun, a chainsaw, and an acetylene torch would freak me out as well. And just to clarify, police later discovered that very torch on the Sea Wind after Buck and Stephanie were captured. So Buck stuck to his original story. The Grahams had drowned while fishing, and this time he claimed they only brought the Sea Wind back to Hawaii because they wanted to prevent it from being destroyed by weather. Which is interesting because before he brought it back because he worried about vandals. Again, if you're just protecting the boat, then why are you repainting it and re-registering it under a new name?
Right.
It doesn't add up. A prison inmate testified that Buck had bragged about killing a man and stealing his boat. Buck simply said the inmate was lying. I think one of them was.
Yeah.
So Buck was eventually found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. And since with a life sentence, he's automatically eligible for parole after 10 years, the life sentence was set to start after the 11 years he had previously still had to do for, drug possession, escape, and theft of the Sea Wind. For Stephanie's trial, she was represented by Vincent Bugliosi, the prosecutor from the Charles Manson trials.
Oh.
Apparently, he ended up switching over to the defense side of things in his career. He was very public about saying he would only ever defend people who he truly believed were innocent, which is fascinating that he represented Stephanie because he openly admits to catching her in multiple lies. So, for example, Stephanie told Vincent They found Mac's will on the boat, and it stated that should something happen to Mac, the boat should be returned to his sister Mary in Seattle, but whoever found the boat could freely use it for 2 years before returning it.
Who would ever?
I
That's
know.
insane.
100%. At the murder trial, the will was mentioned, but yeah, there was nothing about a 2 year grace period. But what I find weird, if this is true about the will, which clearly it was not, why didn't Stephanie bring this up at her first trial when she was charged with theft of the boat? She says her lawyer told her no one would believe the story. Well, her lawyer was correct.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, if you were really taking the boat to Mac's sister, why did you dick around in Hawaii for a month, repaint it, and rename it? Those are not the actions of someone planning to give that boat back,
No.
especially when I will remind you, they ran from the police because they knew the police would take the boat from them.
Mm-hmm.
Another lie, during the murder trial, Stephanie said they were on their way to Seattle to give the boat to Mac's sister. But when Vincent interviewed her, Stephanie said they were going to sail the Seawind for 2 years before returning it. And when she was first captured, she gave the FBI a third story claiming she believed that Mac wanted them to have the boat. So, what is it? Were you taking it to Seattle, sailing for 2 years, and then taking it to Seattle? Or were you simply just keeping it? There are also questions about where Stephanie was on the day that Muff was potentially murdered. She told Vincent Buck had the dinghy all day, so she was stuck on the Iola. In court, Stephanie testified she had the dinghy all day. Just to clarify, in a location like Palmyra, you anchor your boat quite far out from the shore, and then you travel to the shore and back to your boat on a smaller boat like a dinghy. So if you're on the boat and don't have a dinghy, you're pretty much stuck on the boat unless you want to jump in and swim all the way to shore, which I'm sure somebody's done. Um, when asked about the lies that she was very obviously telling, Stephanie said, quote, I've talked to so many people about the case over the years. Sometimes it's hard for me to remember what really happened that day. If you've been
Mm-hmm.
talking about it for years, wouldn't that help you remember it? Unless you've been lying about it for years and are now struggling to remember what the truth actually was,
Yeah.
allegedly. Stephanie claimed it was Buck's idea to take the Seawind, as if he said it would get destroyed by vandals if they left it behind. So by taking it, they would be preserving Mac's love of the boat. First, how many vandals are making the long trek out to Palmyra? Second, preserving his love of the boat implies that you care about this person, but not reporting him missing proves that you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie said they didn't report the Grahams missing because they were trying to protect Buck, who was a wanted fugitive at the time. Stephanie denied any involvement or knowledge of Muff's death. She said she had never harmed anyone in her life. But even if Buck was the killer, you didn't see or hear anything? No gunshots, no altercation. You were one of only 4 people on Palmyra at the time. It just feels unlikely she wouldn't hear anything or that Buck would never say anything to her about it. But Stephanie was found not guilty of Muff Graham's murder. And from the best I can tell, she just went back to life as normal, which included her dog Puffer, who lived to the age of almost 19.
Oh.
That dog had seen some things, but bless, I have no clue as to what happened to the other two. No one seems to know Stephanie's current whereabouts. She'd probably be in her late 70s at this point. Um, And she's the only possible witness to this crime that's still alive. But, not talking. Buck Walker appealed his conviction in February 1987, but was denied. He was sent to the Federal Correctional Facility in Lompoc, California, where he was released in September 2007 after serving 22 years. At the time, Buck was 69 years old and battling terminal cancer. After his release, Buck started to claim he'd been wrongfully convicted. He published a book the year he was released. He used the name Wesley Walker. Um, the book is called Palmyra, The True Story of an Island Tragedy. In the book, Buck claims he was seduced by Muff Graham, and when Mac caught them having sex, Mac killed Muff in a jealous rage.
Oh my God.
The next day, Buck claims he killed Mac in a shootout. So, why didn't he mention this absolutely bullshit story during the murder trial? Well, Buck says he kept the affair a secret to protect the Grahams' reputations.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it absolutely sounds legit. Thing is, everyone who personally spoke to Muff at the time or received a letter from her heard that Muff was scared and uncomfortable around Buck. So much so that she had repeatedly suggested that she and Mac leave the area early. But since Mac had this 2-year trip all planned out, he just refused to deviate from his original plan. It was very much, this is what I want to do. I'm not letting someone else wreck that. So, I mean, I get it, but Buck said the only reason he was convicted in that trial was because his lawyer was incompetent. He said that Stephanie was completely innocent, and he swears he didn't tell her anything about what had happened. He claims he is the only eyewitness to those murders. But if what your stories is what you've said is true, Buck, may I call you Buck? What did you do with Mac's body? How come he's never been found? We're also supposed to believe that Mac was so angry that he killed his wife, dismembered her body, buried her in a box, and burned her, and let you calmly go back to your boat? It doesn't make sense. If Mac was supposedly in a rage, how did he not immediately go after you? Why did he stop after just shooting her? Why did he wait until the next day so you two could have some sort of fucking Old West gentlemanly shootout? And if the shootout actually happened, how the hell did Stephanie not hear any gunshots? And when did all this supposedly happen? Because both you and Stephanie said you were invited to dinner on the boat and they didn't show up. If Stephanie is really as innocent as you claim, why did she have the same story about being invited for dinner and the couple not being there, finding the boat overturned the next day? And not only did Buck's book state that Stephanie was innocent, in it, Buck made sure to thank Stephanie's lawyer, Vincent, for getting Stephanie acquitted. So did Buck really love Stephanie, or was he just really thankful she never ratted him out? We'll never know. After his release from prison, Buck rented a trailer outside of Willits, California. He died from a stroke in April 2010 at the age of 72. But Buck wasn't the only person to write a book about what happened on Palmyra. Stephanie's lawyer, Vincent Bugliosi, released a book in 1991 called And the Sea Will Tell. Yes, I read it. Yes, it's unnecessarily long. And yes, he spends a lot of time talking about how much he likes Stephanie and how great she is and how innocent she is, and then turns around and points out all the times she lied. I don't even know. And for some reason, he uses everyone's real names throughout the book except for Stephanie. He refers to her as Jennifer Jenkins. And I mean, I guess he was protecting her, but it would take so little for someone to hear about this case look it up and go, oh, that was Stephanie, not Jennifer.
Right.
Vincent seemed to fully believe Buck committed the murder on his own and that Stephanie simply knew nothing about it. Vincent Bugliosi died in June 2015 at the age of 80. A TV movie was made based on Vincent's book. Like the book, it was also released in 1991 and called And the Sea Will Tell. It starred Barbara Streisand's husband, James Brolin, as Mac, and daytime queen Deidre Hall as Muff. Deidre, of course, was on more than 5,000 episodes of Days of Our Lives as Marlena. Do you remember when Marlena got possessed by the devil and the love of her life, John Black, had to perform an emergency exorcism? Did this happen 30 years ago this year? Yes. For me, feels like it happened yesterday. You never forget the first time you see a woman levitate. I'll say that. The TV movie also starred Rachel Ward as Stephanie, although because it was based on Vincent's book, her character was named Jennifer. And playing Buck is Hart Bochner, a Canadian actor, most known for playing douchebag Ellis in the 1988 Christmas classic Die Hard. Will I get shamed for calling Die Hard a Christmas movie? Probably. Did Bruce Willis publicly state it is not a Christmas movie? Absolutely. Does the entire thing take place during a Christmas party? I rest my case, Your Honor. As of this record, that fourth military metal box has never been accounted for, and Mac Graham's remains have never been found. He was 43 at the time of his disappearance. Reporting for True Crime and Cocktails, I'm Christy Oxborrow.
Oh, listen, what a case. What a story. Let's grab a quick drink, hit the can, and we'll be back to discuss our thoughts on well, I'm going to say it, the Mac and Muff Graham episode of True
Yeah.
Crime and Cocktails. On three. One, two, three. Welcome back to the Malcolm and Eleanor Graham episode of True Crime and Cocktails. What a wild ride. What a wild
Yeah.
story. I've got so much to say. Let's get into it. Dental tools. That is,
Right? Immediately.
yep, yep.
Brr. Put that on my list of fears, just the words
Here's
together.
what I will say. Why do you think you have any business knowing how to use them? And that's not me directing it specifically at these two. That's just in general. I wouldn't begin to know. And I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
want to try and learn.
Oh, same. I assume it's just in the desperate attempt. Like, I don't think they're doing like dental exams on each other. I think it's just like, I have a toothache kind of thing. You've got to deal with it because sometimes they're not on land for months. Like, they were going to live there for a year.
I
Again,
guess
I
for
bring you
me,
back to Castaway. He had to handle it.
but well, I know, but I guess for me, I'm like, go to the dentist right before you set sail and then just
Oh,
push it to a year. We've all gone a year without going to the dentist, or lots of people
sure.
do. Whew. Anyway,
Oh, I know. I should have known that this would bother you as much as it bothers me.
yeah, that's one of our crossovers. Yes,
Yeah,
that's one of our crossovers. I've just had a lot of dental trauma.
same.
Um, oh God, it's awful. Anyway, okay. Three dogs and 150 pounds of food. You're going to love my first piece of feedback. Not enough dog food. Sorry. Dogs of that size, two big dogs for a year?
Oh, they were going to stay 2 years.
Yeah, no, I don't buy that.
I think they were
Um,
also hoping that the dogs would just eat fish and stuff that they were planting or whatever, and then it just really didn't go well. And obviously on an island like that, not an island, but in an area like that where it's like sandy beaches and whatever, they're not cleaning up after those dogs.
no.
They're letting those dogs go wherever they want and
They've
then
gone wild.
leaving it there in the hot sun.
Oh no, these people are clearly a menace to everybody else who's coming in and out of there. I guess for me, and I wrote this down to talk about later, but I'll get into it now. What I don't understand, I understand that Buck, Roy, Roy Buck, we can call him any combination of the two.
Sure.
Um, I understand that he was running from the law. I
Yes.
understand that he was a wanted man. So I get that. But like, I guess for me, I'm like, was it fun for them to be absolutely in over their heads, not knowing really how to do any of this, consistently failing, having to try and beg people to help give them food and stuff like that? Like, to me, I'm just like, why didn't they give up? Like, there's certainly places that you could go and live, I'm sure, that have a little bit more in terms of resources and like the
Sure.
police aren't looking for you. Like, I just, he's already stolen an identity. Like, I just don't understand like the idea that it's like, oh, we'll go and grow weed there and then sell it to people back on the island or have their friend do that. It's like this just doesn't feel like a this just doesn't feel like a foolproof enough plan to
No.
warrant them having zero skill when it terms of in terms of um sailing, survival, all of the above. Um
100%.
Cutting down entire trees to get coconuts. This is a horror show. Here's something I would offer. If you don't know that cutting down the tree means you're no longer going to be able to get coconuts from that tree, I don't
Hmm.
know if I can even continue talking to these people in terms of them having any normal semblance of thought because that is absolute, it's absurd.
Yeah. How did they think they were going to survive off the land for a year and a half?
And they're going to just cut down a coconut tree anytime they want a coconut?
Oh, it's insane.
Obviously, again, if you leave it alone, it'll grow back, you dimwits. I mean, just again, it's miraculous they lived as long as they did. Um, okay. Stephanie hiding behind a potted plant is absolute madness. Um, this idea that it's like they just chose to take the boat and then all of the ins and outs of make yourself at home. Well, that meant we should take the boat. Well, if that's true, then why repaint it? And I know you said that later, but again, their story keeps changing.
Yep.
Clearly, these people, I mean, look, you know, if you've listened to this show for any amount of time, you know that the one thing I love to scream about is the importance of fair trials, the importance of reasonable doubt, the importance that we would all want that same system being used if it was us and we were
Sure.
innocent. It's so important to me. It's part of the justice system I'm very passionate about.
Of
Here's what I'm
course.
going to say. There's just so little room for reasonable doubt in this case. To your point, there was four people on the island at the time.
Yep.
Like in terms of proving reasonable doubt, it's getting a little bit difficult to prove. To me, where these two went wrong is they should have made up phantom people. They should have said
Oh,
these people came, give a full description like we hear about this on the show all the time. They should have said, and by the way, if ever there was a time and a place that it was possible to get away with it, it could be this scenario because it's an extremely remote location where there are very few people there. They could
yeah.
easily have said, these people rolled up one night, things took a turn, they took them onto their boat, whatever, we don't know what
Sure.
happened to them. And then we took the sea wind to try and go and get help because we didn't know how to use the radio. To me, that's already a better story than the bullshit lies that they clearly were
Mhm.
saying that contradicted themselves constantly.
Yeah. Oh, I'm shocked that he didn't even try and pull the, well, he caught me with his wife, killed his wife, and then stole our boat. And that's why him and the
Right.
boat have never been found because who knows? He's on the run. Like, I just can't believe that they didn't come up with something. And yeah, not that we're saying this is how to get away with a crime, but to your point, they're not keeping track of who's coming and going from that island.
No, there's no like you said, other than Roy Buck, no one was even checking in with the owners of the island. So again, it's like it's
Yeah.
completely plausible. This is a place that is known for people to stop on a larger journey that they're on. Like to
Yeah.
me, the biggest misstep was making it so that they were the only ones there. Like you have to have put it on somebody else. To me, it's like this idea of trying to concoct a story. It just like, oh, they just never came back and we looked for them and couldn't find them. So obviously we had to take their boat, repaint it, rename it, and we were just going to borrow it for a couple years. Like nothing about that sounds plausible at
No.
all.
No.
And they're again, when they're not adding in the addition, because it's another one of those things where it's like you hear people talk about defense lawyers, like a big part of a successful defense case is not only saying my client didn't do it, but it's providing options of someone else who could have, right?
Yeah.
So to me, the fact that these two stuck to this dumb story was so stupid. Like you should have, and then of course him changing his tune late in life, saying, bringing up this, I'll say it, bullshit story that Mac killed Muff, and that's bullshit. I'm sorry. Like
Yes.
I don't buy it for a second. Um, I don't buy any of it, especially considering everyone was creeped out by Buck. Are we really to believe, really, that Muff had a soft spot for him and
No.
seduced him? Get over yourself, man. That's preposterous. Um, Especially considering also he's got a bit of a record and got a bit of a, he's got a bit of a pattern of stealing identities and whatnot. I just, again, I'm shocked that they didn't try and pin it on someone else. I really think that could have been the thing to implant reasonable doubt, but they didn't do anything to implant reasonable doubt. The reasonable doubt was, oh, they just disappeared and we don't know what happened. What are you talking
Yeah.
about? Is
They
that
they drowned,
possible?
and yet wouldn't their bodies have been floating somewhere in the water?
Well, you would think. You would think.
So of the
How?
four people, half of them were experienced, but that was the half that died
Right.
drowning.
Right. Again, to
Mm.
me, it's like not making up other people as your way out was just, again, stupid. Because again, the way it is now, it's like there is no, like, the reasonable doubt is just like, okay, I guess that could be true. It's not like typically when we talk about these things and it's like, well, timelines and this and that up, and it is
Sure.
possible. Like there is no timeline. These
You're
people were
right.
alone together, and then they took their boat, they took the people's boat, repainted it, renamed it. Like I understand that there was not necessarily the physical evidence that we would of course normally want. I just feel like in terms of, we've heard so many cases that get convictions on circumstantial evidence. I just feel like, again, this one I'm like, there's just no other possibility.
Oh, 100%.
They were desperate. This is the other thing. They were
Yeah.
desperate. They were in over their heads. They needed that other boat. These people also, criminal records, especially Buck had an extensive criminal record. The fact that they had a gun, they had motive, like, my God. And here's the only thing I will say. Let's say that one or both of them, either Stephanie and Buck or Buck on his own, killed these two. Here's the only thing I'll say. How is it that they can be so inept at everything? They don't know how to fish. They don't know how to cut down a coconut. They don't know how to drive a boat, but they somehow manage to cover up a double murder?
It's insane. That's a great point. The fact that that second container that we can only assume
Mm-hmm.
has never been found. I mean, how did you pull that off? But also, how did he lift a metal box with a body in it by himself?
I think she was involved. I think he's
Oh,
protesting too much by saying, "Oh,
mhm.
she had nothing to do with it," and blah blah blah. No, 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 no. I mean, this
Oh,
woman
I
again was facilitating all of this man's crimes. So
yeah.
no,
Well, I truly think in that bullshit of a book, that he was like, "Oh, she was absolutely innocent. It was, and it wasn't my fault. It was Mac." I think it was a case of, I'm gonna say she's innocent because she's never ratted him out.
right.
So he's gonna be like, obviously, we're both innocent.
So here's my next question.
Yeah,
Okay, let's say they did it together. I think that's the easiest explanation.
yeah,
They take the bodies, they put them in these metal boxes, they burn them to whatever level, they put them on the shitty boat, Stephanie and Buck's boat,
sure,
and then they sink it. And then as we know, we are to believe that the one metal box washed up on shore, and that's how it was found. Okay.
right.
How were they able to pull that off? So how were they able to drive that boat that, I want to remind you, they got stuck on coral? How were they able to achieve that properly? Did they, like, so what are we to believe that they jumped off of the boat that they were sinking and then swam back to the other boat? Like, did they take both boats out into the water? is there a black box on the boat
Oh, sure. Yeah.
like there
I
would be
don't
in a
know.
plane? I don't know because again, then that would at least probably not. But my point is that it's like I don't, and then I'm going, well, if that's true, we're to believe that these two were functional enough sailors that they could each captain a boat far enough out into the water for one of them to sink and then the other person gets on the other boat and then they drive it back.
It's just
It's
insanity. And what I want more than anything, I can't personally be involved because I can't handle any of the aspects that I'm gonna say. I want to get that little James Cameron thing that he used to
mm,
go down and look at the Titanic. I want to get one of those and have somebody on Palmyra, and I want them to do like the perimeter and see if they can find that other boat, like deep down compared to what divers were looking for,
yeah.
because it's got to be there somewhere.
The only other thing I think that is possible is that there were more people involved. Did
Oh,
they
sure.
call someone? Did they, because, did they call someone from the mainland to come and help move boxes, whatever, sink a boat? Who knows? And those people may not have known that they were doing anything with dead bodies, or they may have known,
Oh,
but like,
sure.
it just feels impossible to me that these two numbskulls who don't seem to be able to do anything right are able to pull that off almost seamlessly, other than having the one metal box wash up on shore. Like, that's, to be honest, that's the reasonable doubt to me is that it's like they should have just, the lawyers should have pushed that they were incompetent. How would they possibly have
Great
pulled this
call.
off?
Great call. Because, yeah, if it hadn't been for the remains popping up like almost 7 years later, they never would have been caught.
Right.
And also, if they, who knows if they would have even noticed he'd escaped out of prison because they weren't trying really hard to find him to the
Right.
point they didn't even realize he'd escaped.
Which is insane.
Oh, I can't even think about it. So he could have gotten away with so much. So that it's just like, how did you even get to the point where the body was hidden that long?
Yeah.
It just feels insane. And it's just, to your point, you have to blame somebody else. You have to do something because you're looking at a couple who were repeatedly described as desperate,
Right.
had no food, had a boat that likely could not get them off the island. So, again, not an island, but they were likely stuck there because that boat physically was not going anywhere. So, what are they going to do? Obviously, they're going to go after the people who have more than enough food, the fancier boat, and be like, well, we're going to take it from them. We want what they have.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how else are we supposed to not look at it that way? I also can't believe they were like, yeah, she didn't know about the crime. I'm
Come
like,
on.
when there's only four of them, she had no idea. He carried those metal boxes with bodies in them all by himself.
No, it's not possible.
Also, who came up with the idea of putting them in the metal boxes?
Great question.
Like, how did you find those boxes to begin with?
Well, I guess maybe they were searching the atoll for any possible supplies because they were completely ill prepared.
I also just can't imagine being like, I'm going to go to this isolated place for 2 years. I'll take 6 months worth of stuff because by then I should be able to pull myself up by my bootstraps. And it's like, I'm not a
Even though
pioneer.
we really don't have a lot of experience sailing, we'll be fine. What?
They had bought a book on
That's
sailing,
no.
and that's why they got lost.
Ugh.
I mean, I'm not saying I could have done it, but I'm not a sailor.
We wouldn't attempt it. That's the whole
No,
point. We know our limitations. Um,
we do.
okay. The fact that when Stephanie was released early from prison, she managed to get jobs with law firms.
Well, it
I
helps when you're
understand that,
related. Yeah.
right, but then the second job wasn't. The second job was right. Like I'm like, I guess they weren't running background checks in the 70s. I mean, it's just wild to me. Um,
It doesn't seem like her jail time or the crime really affected her in a negative way.
Yeah,
She just
which
kind
is
of went about her life.
bizarre. Yeah, at one point, I just wrote, "Why sail if you don't know how to? Is it fun?"
I have a feeling they're like, we need to get as far away from police as we can. And they're on Hawaii. So they're like, well, get on a boat.
I guess to me, it's like, but how did they, like, why at no point were they like, okay, this was a terrible idea?
That's what's shocking to me is it feels like maybe they did say it and it just was never anywhere, but it's wild that at no point did they seem to be like, this was bad. We should go.
Right?
Like, I can't believe they stayed there for months. How
And
long
just
were they planning on taking from that couple? Like, how long were they planning on like, we're gonna kill them? Wait till people are gone,
right.
and then we're gonna take what we want from them.
Yeah. Um, you said, well, wait a second. If Stephanie wasn't a witness to the crimes, what? She didn't hear any gunshots? And I wrote down, maybe she just thought he was fishing.
Oh, wow. Well played.
I mean, that is
Well played.
kind of possible, but is it?
Yeah. Again, I hadn't considered it until we were talking about it. I lifting a body on your own is already bad enough. Lifting a body in a metal box? He's not doing that by himself.
No, unless he's Superman. No, come on. Come
Huh.
on.
I mean, kudos to them for bringing their dogs back.
Yeah, listen, I'm shocked that they didn't do something terrible and like try and eat the dogs or something to survive. But I guess they just thought, well, we can steal our way. We can cut down enough coconut trees and shoot enough fish. I mean, it is a truly fascinating story, and there is part of me that would like to source and watch this made for TV movie, if I'm being honest.
Oh, of course. I did consider it because I mean, Deidre Hall, bless.
Icon.
Um, but yeah, I never did. I watched multiple documentaries and I read so much about that atoll. Um, and I will say this, it didn't make it into my notes, so I don't have it fresh, but the family who owned the Palmyra got to the point where they were like getting pretty sick of people going there. And there were multiple occurrences where people would go to Palmyra, get injured in some way, and then sue them for like somebody fell on broken glass and they sued them because they're like, I'm a doctor and I can no longer use my hands, kind of a thing. And it's like, and it's your fault for not keeping Palmyra, clean or whatever. And it's like, but I mean, technically you were trespassing, but they kind of got sick of that. So they hired a guy in like 1992 to live on Palmyra by himself and be like a caretaker. So anybody who would show up, he'd make them sign a form that they're like writing, like signing off any way of being able to sue these people if anything goes wrong, and also make them pay like $5 for being there. And the whole plan was this guy was going to be there for a year. So before he went, he goes to like a dog shelter, adopts a dog, goes to this island, and then people like come and visit him. And he ended up having like a bunch of chickens and like three dogs and a cat and whatever. He ended up living on that damn island atoll. He lived there for like 9 years
Oh my God.
and then was like, time to get back to, the real world. And there was a comment he made about like, the first thing I saw when I got to the mainland was somebody on a bike with a cell phone. I didn't even know cell phones existed. And so he was like, it was tough. It was tough. Um, but the thing about him that bothered me was he left one of his dogs behind on the island. And I only know because he talked about like, this is my dog. I can't remember the dog's name. But he had multiple when he first got there. He had this one dog and he's like, this is its name, my great companion, whatever, because he was alone for most of the year, every year, always alone. So the dogs were companions. And then somebody did an article years later that was like, hey, here's that same dog. I checked photos, the name, it was all the same. And it was like, it's the island dog. People who come here check this dog because it's like keeping an eye on things. And I'm like, you left that dog behind.
Is anybody
Did you
feeding the
even,
dog?
did you
How is the
even,
dog surviving?
I have no idea. I assume it's like eating crabs or birds or
Oh God.
something, but I'm like, did you try and bring the dog back? I don't know. I started spiraling when I was reading about it and I was like, I'm not going to mention it. And then I did. So,
Well, listen,
yeah.
fantastic work as always. Truly, what a wild one. I mean, listen, every time I don't think you can find another wild story, you do. So kudos to you. 12 out of 10.
Oh, I'll I'll take that as long as it means I can stop saying atoll.
It's taken a toll. See you never.
Yes, it has.
Uh, and we thank you, dear listeners, for joining us on this wild ride. If you haven't already, give us a follow on the socials on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at True Crime and Cocktails. If you'd like some bonus content, go over to patreon.com/True Crime and Cocktails to learn more about our subscription-based service over there. And of course, the only place for official True Crime and Cocktails merch is, of course, truecrewmerch.com. So check that out as well if you're interested. Christy, do you want to tell the people about next week's episode?
On the next True Crime and Cocktails, Mary Morris and Mary Morris.
Cannot wait. I'm intrigued. You've done your job because I can't wait to hear all about what that means. Christy, do you want to say goodnight to the people?
Good luck, Iceland.
Oh, yeah. Good night to the Puffins.